Okay, hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're back in the Cessna 152. We're cruising here at 2,500 feet. And today we're going to be looking at the procedure for engine failure at altitude. So one of the big things for training to be any pilot is emergencies, and that is obviously still the same in the Cessna 152. So next to me at the moment I have the official Cessna emergency checklist for the 152. And I'm just going to read that out quickly before we actually simulate the emergency, just so we know what we're actually going to be doing. We're also currently near Bristol Airport, and that's going to be a key factor in our emergency, as we're going to be constantly looking for places to land. Okay, so the actual checklist is need to trim for 65 knots and pitch down, and then we check the wind direction, which at Bristol is 270 at 2 currently. So very light winds, but that is something we still have to think about when flying a glide approach with an engine failure. Then we need to investigate why the engine's failed and see if we can try and restart it. We have the altitude, so we might as well try and see if we've just forgotten something. So we'll do that by checking that the fuel is on down here, and we'll check that mixture is fully rich, and check the throttle is actually in and not on idle, and check carb heat. If it's not already, bring that to on, just make sure there's no ice build up in the engine. Then we'll make sure magnetos are set to both. Also make sure the primer is in and locked, otherwise it could mess up the engine. And the next thing we're going to do is do our mayday call and set our transponder squawk code to 7700, which is the code for general emergencies in aviation. Next thing we're going to need to do is just kind of secure the engine, secure the aircraft, bring the fuel off, mixture fully lean, and we'll close the throttle. Magnetos will go to off, and if we have any passengers, which we don't on this flight, we'll brief them, make sure harnesses are tight, and make sure doors are unlatched if you're in the real aircraft. Then when you finish with flaps, if you're landing in a field, you turn the master switch off, just to prevent anything from happening to the avionics while you land, in case you flip or anything. Also, something I forgot to mention earlier is when we're checking the wind direction, which we already know, as we are next to the airport, and we just departed from Bristol. We'll also select our landing field if we have to, or if we can make it to the runway, we'll obviously try and go there. Okay, so just before we actually simulate the emergency, something you're always going to be doing in cruise, when you're doing a cross-country flight in a GA aircraft, is looking for a possible landing site if you have an engine failure at the current point in time. So that's something we're going to do now. We're going to look around and just kind of get a feel for the area, which we would have done normally as we're flying into the area. And we're going to see where the best place is to land most likely. So looking at the current heading, we've got the wind 270, so heading from the west. So it needs to be ideally a field that's lengthways in this direction. Okay, I'm thinking maybe that field might be a good idea, as that will give us enough time to turn around, kill some speed and altitude, and then fly into wind for an approach into the field. Obviously we're probably not close enough to the runway at the moment to end up making that, especially as we wouldn't actually fly near the runway. We'll start our turn now and proceed on our journey. As we turn though, obviously that field's going to go out of our sight, so we'll start looking for another spot. I'm thinking somewhere over there. There's lots of fields there. There'll be a field over there we'll be able to land into most likely. At the moment we're close enough to the runway that we'd pick that, and we're going to simulate our engine failure in just a second, so we are going to aim for the runway, as that's going to be our best option, and obviously we'll always go to the runway where we can. Just save some hassle trying to get the aircraft back to a hangar to get it repaired if we need to, and even just to fly it again. Okay, so let's go ahead to make engine failure now then, just below, or just above 2,300 feet. It's in the engine failure, I'm going to go throttle idle straight away, and let's go ahead and turn now to our selected landing spot, and begin to pitch for 65 knots, which we have, and we'll start to trim the aircraft out. Then we're going to start investigating. I've already picked our landing spot. We obviously know why that's happened. It's a simulated engine failure. We did it by pulling the mixture. Then we need to communicate and do our mayday call. So we'll squawk 7700, and we'll do our mayday call to Bristol Tower. Bristol Tower, Golf Alpha Mike, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. We've had an engine failure. We're attempting to land on the runway 27. Okay, as we come in now, I need to start bringing in flaps as we are a little bit low and also a little bit slow. Flaps will allow us to fly at slightly slower speed. I'm going to try and cut off the threshold of the runway, as then we don't need to glide for as long. And while we're doing this, we'll also start to turn off the engine and secure the aircraft. And also bring landing lights on. Okay, we'll also brief passengers if we had any at this point, and make sure harnesses are secure, and also unlatch the doors in case we need to evacuate the aircraft. Okay, we'll bring in our final stage of flaps, and we do our final call. Golf Alpha Mike landing runway 27. And we turn final. Very short final. And because we're landing on the runway, we don't need to turn off the master switches. And there we go. It's never landed. A good thing about keeping the master switches on is we still have radio communications. So we're going to tell ATC we're going to vacate. We're going to vacate left as all commercial aircraft go to the right. Golf Alpha Mike vacating left on runway 27. Okay, at this point, not doing any brakes. The aircraft will just kind of slow itself down. And if we can, we're going to try and get off the actual taxiway. Okay, so now we're here. We're going to turn master switches off and just make sure all the aircraft is turned off, all the lights off. And then at this point, we'd have some airport ground crew that would come and take our aircraft back to a GA apron and get the engine looked at for the engine failure. Okay, so there we go. So that's a tutorial on a engine failure at altitude in Cessna 152. It's probably the most common emergency you're going to get, as you're obviously in cruise for most of the flight normally. So that is the most likely point you're going to get engine failure, along with on takeoff, which I'm going to do next. So if you want to see the tutorial on the engine failure after takeoff, do let me know. And if you did enjoy, please do leave a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.